In this video, we're going to talk about the division of whole numbers. Now, we're not going to worry about fractions, we're not going to be worried about negative numbers. All we're going to talk about are non-negative numbers, whole numbers, the number 0 and any number greater than 0. Alright, so for this first problem, let's just kind of talk about what division really is trying to do. Because I find that some students really have trouble with division. Is so odd. It's backwards of everything. I learned how to multiply, and I multiplied starting on the right, and I moved to the left. But in division, I moved from the left to the right. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, well, let's take a look at what's happening physically behind division. So I've got a division problem here, and it says 15 is divided by. That symbol right there means divided by. So 15 is divided by 3. What is the answer? Okay, and so what we're really doing, since multiplication, and let's just come up with one right off the top of our heads here. Multiplication, something like 2 times 3. We learned that 2 times 3 is 2 plus 2 plus 2. Whoop, the other 2, the kind of 2 that looks more like a 2. Aha, there it is. And so we're really trying to add 2 to itself 3 times. Well, division is the opposite of multiplication. And so instead of using addition, we're going to use subtraction. The only thing that we know, though, is the group size. When we subtract, we're always going to subtract in groups of 3. And so let's write out 15 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And now when we subtract off, we are going to subtract off in groups of 3. So I have 15 things. I take out a group of 3. So I've done that once. I take out another group of 3. I've done that twice. And I continue this, and I do this a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time. And I have no more things left. I've gathered up all 15 things perfectly in groups of 3. So the question is, now I have 15 things. I'm subtracting them off in groups of 3. How many groups did I get? That's this answer here. This represents the number of groups. Alright, so in division, you're just using successive subtraction to find out how many groups of that size there are in that number. Okay, all of these numbers, by the way, have special names. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this same exact problem, but I'm going to write it 3 different ways. Okay, division is actually written in 3 different ways depending on what you want to do. Simple division, where you have to know your multiplication facts, is very typically written in the way that I wrote this problem. And so let's go ahead and put that in there. Divided by 3 is 5. Okay, I can write that another way. Instead of writing it in linear format, I can actually write it in a more functional format. And by functional, I mean as you try to divide larger and larger numbers, this becomes kind of messy. It doesn't really provide a nice, neat way of doing it. There is a second way in which you write the 3 first, and then you write kind of a closing parenthesis and a horizontal line at the top. Underneath it, you put the 15. Your answer would go on the top. And I'll do more of those later once I get to the examples, especially the examples that involve larger numbers. Okay, the third way, I'm going to change colors here. The third way, I forgot to put 5. The 5 goes up top. The third way is what you might recognize as fraction form. If you haven't talked about fractions yet, that's okay. This isn't a fraction. This is division. Okay, so we're going to put the big number 15 on top. we're going to put what's called the divisor, and I'll talk about that in a bit, on the bottom, and our answer is 5. This is really handy when you're talking about smaller numbers as well. Okay, I will expand more on this in fractions, but for right now, this is a third way to write division. Okay, so now let's identify the things. The number 15 is the number that is being divided. Okay, that number is known as the dividend. That is its name. The number that is doing the dividing, the number 3 in each case, is actually doing the dividing, and that is called the divisor. Which makes sense, because if you're working, you would be a worker, and so you are the one doing the work. The divisor does the dividing. The final number, the number 5, is the answer. That's known as the quotient. Okay, and so those are the 3 numbers that you deal with in division. Everything is just simply a mixture of those numbers. In the subsequent videos, particularly right in this same area, I'm not going to do anything beyond just whole numbers and integers. We'll talk about fractions and decimals later. But right now I'm going to concentrate on just getting the division algorithm, that step-by-step process, down. Before we get to another example, though, let's talk about some do's and don'ts. Because unlike multiplication, there are some things you just can't do in division. So we need some rules. Let's talk about some division rules. Alright, so now, in multiplication, if you multiplied any number by 0, you got 0. However, in division, you can't divide by 0. Cannot. You know what? Let's start with an actual word here. Cannot divide by 0. Ever. Okay, what you're really asking in this case, and most people are like, oh, why? Oh, okay, so I don't know why. I don't. No, there really is a why, and you really should know it. Okay, I cannot divide by 0. If I did, what I'm saying is, I'll take the number 5 for example. 5 divided by 0 is equal to something. I don't know what that something is. Okay, what I'm really asking though is, what number can I multiply 0 by and get 5? But wait, you just told me that if I multiply something by 0, I get 0. Yeah, it doesn't work because 5 is not 0. But 0 times anything is 0. And so you have this thing called a contradiction. You can't divide by 0. There's no number that you can find that you could get multiply 0 by and get 5. So you can't divide by 0 ever. Just period. Can't. This particular thing is so special that it has its own name. This, if you try to divide by 0, it's called undefined. Meaning we can't define a number in which dividing by 0 makes any sense. And so we're just going to call it undefined. This is when bad things happen. And you'll get to more on that as you get into algebra and up through the ranks of mathematics. Whenever something is undefined, something bad happens. And so we want to make sure that we don't ever put that in there. The second rule. If you divide the number 0 by anything, other than 0, so any number that you want, but it cannot be 0, other than 0. Whoop. You get 0. Okay, and so it's almost kind of the flip of what I did up here. I'm going to take 0 and I'm going to divide it by 5. Well, what I'm really saying is I have I'm taking 0 pieces of a 5-piece pie. How much pie am I? Well, if I'm not taking any pie, I'm not taking any pie. It really doesn't matter how many pieces the pie is chopped into. Another way of looking at it is you're taking 0 objects and you're grouping them in groups of 5. How many groups do you get? Well, wait, I don't have any objects, so I can't select any, so I can't subtract. So I don't have any groups. There's nothing there to do. So 0 divided by 5 is 0. 5 divided by 0 is undefined. Little bit of a switch here. If you divide by 1, 1 is the multiplicative identity, and so it's that special number that if you multiply it by anything, you get that something back. Okay, and so any number divided by 1 is that number. Okay, and so if you have 5 divided by 1, that's 5. If you have 135 divided by 1, that's 135. Okay, it doesn't matter what number you divide by 1, it's still that number coming back. Alright, those are the rules. Those are the main rules for division. And so in my next video, I'm going to do some examples of division, and especially some of the larger numbers, so that you get a feeling for what the division algorithm, or that step-by-step process is to divide large numbers.